this can be a category that, how do you explain it?
I've got this cumulative power bill over time to 2050, which is $187,000, which is like, that's not chump change.
And smart energy to me is also a lot like when we talked about smart homes. It can be just something very basic. You can spend a little bit more money and start to add an EV charger, and then you can go up to the best solutions. The entire grid and within your home is being monitored.
My co-presenters here are JC Gonzalez. Why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of an intro?
Absolutely. My name is JC Gonzalez. I work for a company called HomePro, and we operate in Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. We started as a security company and morphed into an integrator home technology company. And about 8-9 years ago, we started a division with electricals. So, I sit before you as somebody that you work with on a daily basis. We talk to your builders, we talk to your customers. So hopefully we can add some insight as to what we're seeing, what people are asking, and what the direction is in this space.
And then Angela Larson, which I call you Angie. Angie is the GM of Professional Solutions at Savant, which is headquartered in Hyannis, Massachusetts, right down the road from me, at least when I'm in Centerville.
I'm happy to be here. This is really exciting. If you don't know, Savant, they're a smart home player and have really been focused on kind of what does the smart home space look like. But what's been exciting, as JC said, over the last, 5 and 10 years is how the smart home is changing. And really excited today to talk a little bit about what does it mean to have foundational solutions in the smart home, and power is one of those great categories.
The way we're going to flow is we're going to cover some of the drivers and kind of the status of this category for starters. We're going to define smart power in terms of those pieces and parts and how they all fit together. We're going to get to some good, better, best recommendations. We're going to give you a nice grid. And the grid is very appropriate for power, right? To have a grid, we'll have a nice table with good, better, best offers, and talk about really some of the practical implementation that you've been doing with builders over the last couple of years, JC. Pricing and profit margins will be covered. So that's the flow. These are the pieces and parts, and we will dive into these pieces and parts, but it's about 11 categories. I had 10 and you made me put power conditioning in here, but these are the pieces and parts of the power system. It's generating and distributing power in an intelligent way. And in terms of the drivers, has anyone heard of this thing called AI? Okay, I think we've all heard a little bit, but there's a thing that goes with AI, and that's data centers, because we have to process a lot more information and we need a lot more bits and bytes to be processed, and data centers need huge power, so that like some of these data center service providers are actually buying power plants or having nuclear power plants that were down recommissioned to feed that beast. We're all kind of from the electronics industry. We mutter that under our breath, but like, we've done a good job. There are a lot of electronics out there doing a lot of different things, and they're all sucking power. We've got the whole electrification movement in terms of some of the major systems in home building for heating, for cooking, for water heating. So those are huge drivers. Then we have EVs, right? And so you're like, oh, it's a car. Why do I care about the car? Well, 80% of charging of EVs is done at home. Anyway, all of that demand is driving residential electricity prices up. The estimates are 40% increase in residential electricity between 2025 and 2030, and doubling of electricity rates for residential electricity by 2050. I think the other piece that's a driver is just unreliability. So regardless of price, are you going to get the power with all of the storms that we see coursing through, and wildfires, and really the aging infrastructure of our grids? I've got this cumulative power bill over time to 2050, which is $187,000, $6, which is like, that's not chump change, that's a Ferrari and or several trips to Europe. I mean, that's a lot of money. But we don't do a good job in home building of thinking beyond the transaction. We don't think about total cost of ownership, total cost of the buy, but the cost of power is huge, and it's just going to be increasing as we discuss. So that's kind of the baseline. This is a slide from a survey that we do with our interns who nobody responds to surveys anymore. If we've ever sent you a survey, I'm sure you didn't respond. But so what we do, I used to send people $1 with a pen and paper research, and I used to get like 500 surveys back, but it doesn't happen anymore. But what we do is we have our summer interns go online and look at what builders are promoting on their websites and their other forums to figure out whether they have an offer, or at least whether they have an offer that they're strongly promoting. Smart power is one of the categories that we've been tracking, and you could see we've got almost 40% of the billion-dollar plus builders that we're following doing something in this regard. I'm not saying they're doing all songs and dances smart power, but they're doing something. We've got 17% of the 200 million to 999 million builders, and then just 10% of the smaller builders. This is something we see across the board in a lot of categories. The regional builders are behind on innovation feature set, which I don't get, right? Like I think if anything, you would want to be ahead and not let the big nationals or the super regionals have the edge on you in terms of feature set. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Angie.
Okay, that's fantastic. So yeah, we're going to just look at what is smart power? Like what are we talking about here? And how should we start thinking about it? If I'm looking at the room, how many of you think that you're offering smart power today? This is pretty quiet. Okay, we got a couple. Okay, all right. Well, yes, thank you. Uh,
Those were
table up
pro
or front.
people.
Yes, thank you.
They're ready to help.
But this is good. So I think yeah, first let's just understand what it is, because as we look at this, I think it's easier than you think to get into this category. And so let's just start talking about what do we think smart power looks like. Now, John showed us that great chart of the 11 circles, right, that orbit, but you can kind of break them down into a couple of different categories as we think about this. One is kind of what are solutions that are really targeted towards a specific problem. Okay, these are really easy to understand. Like I might have a UPS that's targeted to keep my network up and running while there's a blip in some kind of
What's a
power event.
UPS? I thought they
Okay.
delivered packages.
Oh, come on.
Uninterruptible power supply.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I might have an extra power supply on my network or somewhere in the chain of my home, right? So I'm not interrupting that cycle and causing a rebooting event to happen. Maybe you could even call a generator a targeted solution, right? It is a thing that is giving me an amount of power towards a certain amount of circuits in the home, right? So I'm solving a very specific problem. These are very good things to have, and I kind of put them in that targeted device management category. And you kind of see these out in the space. And then I think you have kind of that second category, which is more foundational, or think about it as more infrastructure in the home, I think is the way I would think about this, which is, are we delivering, kind of actual smart intelligence or smart power into the infrastructure of the home? So what does that mean, right? I think you can look at that as you look at the slide and say, okay, well that has us thinking about the different ways that this home gets power. Okay, how does it even get power? I guess when the three of us met, dating us again, the way a home got power was through the grid, right? And that was pretty much it. But as you're starting to add all of these different ways that a home can get power, you start to say, well, how are we managing that? How are we dealing with that as a home builder? And what does that mean for us, right? So how can homes get power? They can certainly get power through backup generators, through batteries, through solar, all kinds of different ways that you can now power a home that you guys are being asked to manage and understand. And we also have to think about intelligent infrastructure. I kind of think about this as we think about the electric panel. Okay, so you think about the panel has been dumb for a fairly long time. It's kind of cool, you know, because mechanically the breaker trips and there's a safety and security feature there, but that's been it for a long time, right? And how do we use that foundation of power, that electricity, that power box to tell us things about the home and the state of the power coming in? We don't have to read all these words, but these are some of those examples, right, that we just talked about as we think of it. And like John said, you can think of these targeted solutions as both regulating that power, right, but also conditioning that power. Are we keeping the power clean to a certain part of the home, right? So maybe there's specific electronic components that we want to make sure have some nice clean power going to them. Those are all solutions. And so some of you are probably touching this category without thinking about it as a smart power solution.
Is power conditioning, power quality just like for electronics geeks and AV geeks, or is there like more to it with solid circuit devices and so many different kinds of products, not just in the AV and stuff?
You
It's
take that
it's a
because
softball question.
well, it is a great question.
The answer is yes. I mean, it's so much more than just, single devices. You can have your entire home, run through power conditioning systems, and that's why we're up here, is to talk about some of those things. Well, we've got some examples. You can start small and build upon it.
But
Well, John,
it'll corrupt a chip. It'll corrupt the software within something that's got, smarts in it.
I think we used to think of things that were power events as like spikes or surges. You know, maybe that would come from weather, maybe that would come from lightning. Things like that would become spikes or surges.
Yep.
What you're seeing now is also the opposite, which is dips in power, right? So now we've got kind of things happening throughout the day, even in your own neighborhoods, right? Where you're actually the power coming into your home is going through these elevated and kind of cycles as they go through. And does it damage just $20,000 sensitive electronic components? No, it causes things to reboot in the home. It causes all kinds of things as you're kind of experiencing that home. Different types of power. We kind of talked about some of these. I won't kind of revisit them, but I think about these things in terms of you're either having a solution that's kind of targeted towards a specific device or a specific area of the home, or you're kind of building a foundation across the property. So what does it take? And kind of look at what is the anatomy of something that's foundational? And I think you can look at any or all of these as part of the anatomy. Okay, so this is one of those things where you kind of look at the different pieces and start to understand what it looks like. I'll start there in the middle, kind of as you look at that and say, hey, one of the biggest things to look at is that breaker panel, right? And what kind of intelligence, information, insight are you getting from that panel, right? Are we getting notifications that something has happened? Is it that basic? That's very helpful. People can have a breaker trip and not know for, days, weeks, months, depending on the home. Are we getting those kinds of notifications? That can be that simple. It can also be what power am I consuming and how am I consuming it, right? No, understanding the consumption of the home. Like thinking about how you drive your EV, right? It's telling you some of those statistics. You're going to start to understand where and how you're consuming power in the home, which means you can start to manage that. Then you've got kind of your sources of power. We talked about certainly the grid is the most common source of power that we see, but we're starting to see these other common sources of power, right? We certainly see solar coming in to feed batteries, and batteries feeding the home power as a source. And you're starting to see all kinds of future discussions about what else could power the home, right? Anybody reading articles about how your F-150 could power your home one day, right? It's basically could act like a generator, right? What kinds of things are you going to have to manage that can add power into the home, and what does that look like? And then think about intelligent, I want to call them appliances, JC, just for a lack of a better term. But I think, when you think about the smart appliance category, I think sometimes people think of it as like a novelty, like, "Oh, is my fridge gonna tell me I'm out of milk or something?" But I think smart appliances is really, more foundational than that, because you look at what is consuming power inside the home, and John already brought it up, right? That that electric vehicle charger where, what did you say, 80%?
80%.
Okay, of charging is happening in the home for people that have an EV, that's a major source of power consumption.
Before you get to the UI
Yeah.
side of things, which is one of my favorites, the grid, we have different flavors of grid too, right? We have dumb grid and we have smart grid. You know, we have smart grids where you're getting the information and you can consume from the grid at a better rate than not. And we also have grids where you can send electricity up and be compensated for it when you're running, extra electricity. But we also have grids that don't have that sort of functionality across the country.
All sorts of different avenues out there for us to think, consider, and look at as
Yeah.
yeah, as providers, as builders, and yeah, it's all things we need to look.
But we have some utilities, some local distribution companies that have vision too, right? Like NRG. NRG is involved in a lot of the downstream space, so they certainly understand what could be done with smarts too. And that's Houston, and you know better than
Oh
I
yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, and we all see what they're doing, which is trying to keep up, right? And so how do they keep up? How do they do this and how do they deliver stability? How do we help with that? And what's, what's kind of the contribution as we think about that? All of this is fantastic and valuable kind of independently as we think about the different components, but how do we give the homeowner a view of what all of this looks like, right? And John, that's where you mentioned something like a user interface. Folks love to do, they love to see how much solar they're producing, right? Like, oh, look how much solar I'm producing today, right? The view is the most valuable part of the whole thing, right? So think of this as kind of that view of I'm looking at my home holistically. I'm understanding how much power I'm producing through solar. I'm understanding how much power I'm consuming. Where are the variations and what am I doing? So we can
When
talk.
you say that they're checking to see how much solar they're generating, that's real world information. You guys know that that's happening with your customer base, right? Because like I remember when communicating thermostats, which had been around for 25 years before they became mass adopted, and like everyone was shocked. People are really using the communicating thermostat to reset their, they were checking on their temperature all the time, but that's happening with solar too.
Oh, of course. I mean, in the first 3 months you own solar, right? You look at that app all the time because people want to understand that that investment, is delivering value, right? And so you see these same types of things as to understand how to manage the home. One of these pieces in that first one we talked about is how do you add intelligence right into that load center, right, as we think about it. And there's a lot of ways to kind of skin the cat, right, as we look at how do you add intelligence. And some of you are probably already thinking about different ways to do this. There are beginning in the market now to become intelligent breakers. So, breakers that can communicate certain things. That is one way to add intelligence here. There are becoming intelligent panels where the entire load center itself has intelligence. And then there's intelligence that you can kind of add in to panels like, circuits at a time, right? What we're looking at on the screen here is 2 circuits at a time, right? We wanna add intelligence to these circuits. Why would you wanna do one versus the other, right? They have all kinds of various degrees of pros and cons as you look at this. But I think the main point here is that this is a great place to add intelligence, and you look at managing the home. The core of this, John, is that 6 or 8 circuits in the home are gonna consume the most power. So you can manage and monitor power on all the circuits and have a full intelligent load center. That's a great way to do it. But you can also look at, we know the major consumers of energy are gonna be your HVAC, water heaters.
Dryers, yeah, and really the HVAC is accounts for about 40 to 50% of the energy consumption. So, we'll start there and then look at other loads that we need to control.
Depending on your market, you could be in an area where time of use rates apply. And so do you want to have those things be able to be used at certain times of day? Do we want to charge the vehicle at certain times of day? Do we want to heat the water at certain times of day? How do we help people manage through that? Some of the features and benefits just by adding intelligence at the load center. I'm just going to pick on a couple of these so we
And
don't have to go
I just
through it.
want to make some color commentary here
Sure.
for a second because you've been showing a lot of pictures of your product and they're really pretty. They have great industrial design and they care about that. And if you're trying to sell a tech forward solution to somebody and it looks like, something from the 50s, but it makes a difference in terms of the sell through and people believing that there's something more to this.
I think, John, also kind of marrying it up, right? If we look at how do you marry it up, which is how do you get all this data in one place, right? Your homeowner may have a situation where they have an app showing how much solar they're producing. They may have an EV charger app showing their EV charging. You can end up with a lot of disparate information that you also don't know how to tie together,
Yeah.
right? So this is a great
But
way.
this is also industrial design, the way these look, right? These UIs look great.
And that's something we focus on. We talk about something, the art of a demonstration in our showroom, and we want to show, things that look great that people want to utilize on a daily basis. And it's important to have this to have companies like Savant, come out with these great products.
So we'll look at app features and benefits, but I know we want to get to some of the good stuff here. We can also look at things like how do you use a battery in the home, right? And how do you even think about a battery? How do you even get started in thinking about that conversation? But I want you to think about basically a battery inside of a home really helping to support or maximize the other power sources. It's not very typical that you're gonna install a home that is just, like, running off a battery out in, and being completely untied and untethered to any other kind of power source, right? That's not what we're really talking about here. This is really where you're using that battery as an aid, as a, assistant, as a compatible with these other ways that the home's gonna get power. Then once you add that battery, you get you get additional features and functionality that the homeowner again can look at and can say, okay, I'm now have a battery in my home. Do I think about a battery as more of a emergency backup, like I might a generator? Or do I think about a battery as more of a daily driver and I'm expelling that battery on the daily to take me off the grid for some or part of the day, maybe during time of use, maybe all those things. So I got to think about that as more of a daily
Yeah.
driver.
So does a builder need to think through all these design and engineering trade-offs, or is that the role of an integrator?
I think it's a combined role. I think, you've got to have the vision to want to do this, and then you've got to pair up with another integrator who has the knowledge, the experience, and the know-how and the ability to sell it, to design it,
Yeah.
to service it, and all those components.
Let's talk about how do you get started? Because John, I don't want to have this room thinking this is overwhelming.
Yeah.
This is overwhelming, right? I don't want you to be in that headspace where you're now like, okay, I'm already like a little bit overwhelmed. Let's talk about how do you get it?
Few things to consider, and I really want to emphasize what John said earlier, that consumption and power and costs are going to do nothing but increase in the next few years, 3 to 5%. Sometimes more depending on where you are. It's going to continue to increase. So we don't have to do everything, but we should start to do something basic as like you said earlier about the just monitoring the HVAC systems. That is the biggest energy hog in your home. So let's start with something as simple as that, and then from there you can build onto it. This is just sort of a grid to show people we can start small and we can build onto it.
I want to talk through some of the specifics.
Absolutely, yeah,
I don't
we certainly
consider
can.
this overwhelming. First
Yeah.
of all, we've got an installed
Yeah.
expense here that looks quite reasonable, which might be below what most builders out there would expect the installed cost would be. So our good is at 1,500, our better is at 3,000, and our best is at 20,000. Now there's maintenance costs, etc. We've noted the margins there. They maybe aren't as good as flooring, but everything can't be flooring. The thing that I think is interesting about what we've devised here is that the control, the UI, is at every level. To remember the go-go days for structured wiring, we put a lot of infrastructure in on the hope that it was going to be used, and we didn't have enough active components hanging on that wire to really make the benefit felt to the consumer. So I think that this is as this category lifts off, for us to have that control, that active control and information piece, even at the lowest level, is a really good idea.
Once people really start to look at it and utilize it on a daily basis, it becomes part of their habit. It becomes part of, what they want to look at.
Yeah.
And energy and consumption and usage is the exact same. And smart energy to me is also a lot like when we talked about smart homes. It can mean many different things. It can be just something very basic. You can spend a little bit more money and start to add an EV charger as just a standard within your home, and then you can go up to the best solutions where you've got full battery that's the entire grid and within your home is being monitored, and it's a smart, truly smart.
We've got on there our installed price. We've got builder margin. The more you do, the better your margin opportunity is on a percentage basis. Estimated savings on a percentage basis against the electric bill. This takes that cumulative power bill and it looks at it against the savings that would be realized. So you're getting payback, more than the payback, in 5 years. And you're getting huge payback over 20, 25 years. If we get to a net zero situation, not just net zero for the house, 80% net of the car fueling as well. One of my messages I want is like, this is a category where it's been caught up in a lot of political noise. Cool, however you want to fall on that stuff, take care of the planet or not. But like, this is the laws of gravity. This is the economic laws of gravity. There's a clear economic value proposition here. This is without federal tax incentives. There are going to be incentives, I think, from the utilities, but this is without federal or local tax incentives that this is a winner economically. We worked on this and it just became more and more clear that it's a no-brainer.
In my opinion, we're still at the beginning of this. It's going to do nothing but get better from our perspective, from the vendor's perspective, and everybody else. Okay, just real quick, this I'm not going to go through everything. This is HomePro. Been in business for 27 years. I want to talk about this slide for just a quick second because this is a reason why we're up here. Just this year is when we started to adopt and really lean into this space. We've been partners with a company called Hillwood for many years, and over the last few years, we get together with them every year to discuss our technology offerings and where we see the business going. This last year is when we really started getting into energy management, and this is a space that more and more buyers are asking about. This is a space where more and more builders are asking about, and it just made sense for us to really start to focus on this. And this is brand new for us, so I certainly don't have all the answers, but I know what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and where the business is going. These are just some pictures of our showroom. You'll get a chance to hang out. I think we're going to have some barbecue, an open bar, and
This can be a category that, how do you explain it? How do you explain what it is? How do if you get the chance to talk through it at a level like this, okay, you start to say, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it is something that, how do you demonstrate it? How do you showcase it? I think we'll learn a lot
yeah.
at your showroom.
We have digital red lines. We meet with the buyer. We have a discussion as to what some things that they want to put in their homes, and certainly smart energy is a way to do this. This is just an example of us meeting with the customer, listening to what's important, and steering them in a direction that we think might make sense for their homes. This is just to showcase, hey, we take this very seriously. We know what we're doing, and that's what you guys need to do. You need to partner with somebody that really embraces this, understands it, and wants to be an advocate for your installations.
Well, I think the unique thing you guys do is you bring the line voltage and the electronics or technology piece together. You have both specialties under one roof.
Right.
Obviously, this is a category that's a little bit of both specialties.
So I'm going to talk about just two examples real quick. This is a land developer that we've been in business with. Again, I talked about earlier. It is Hillwood, and this is a community where they've realized that this is an important area for them. So, we've partnered with Savant, the full home control, and we've added a couple smart modules that can monitor a couple different circuits. And those circuits are monitoring some things that we talked about earlier. And they'll start to send information to us. They get on their devices and they're able to see exactly what's going on in their homes.
And that's a standard for them?
To standard.
Okay, and
Sure.
so then there's an upgrade
That's
path
right.
to add more
Yep.
circuits?
Nice segue, John. So we meet with the buyers and we have a full array of options that we can discuss in this space and other spaces. But for purposes of this, these are some things that we offer their customers, their buyers, and again, these are things that we work with the builder specifically to establish pricing that's appropriate for them, for their buyers, and it's something that we can build on from an entry level to the
So you've got
full house.
3 options offers there in
Right.
the energy category
Yeah,
with TriPoint. And how did you arrive at those 3?
sure, John. It was a matter of us looking at the space, talking with folks like Savant to see what makes sense for entry level, good, better, best, and then coming up with programs, pricing to,
Mhm.
and of course, working with the builders to make sure that this is something that's important to them, and if it is, then we'll build a program together.
So, what's hot right now? I think this is just kind of a fun topic to think about. We'd already talked about, how do these components make other areas of the home more intelligent, right? So as you add things like this circuit control, what does it mean, right? And one of the things it can mean is it can mean that the generator, I said smarter here, but it can make that generator experience completely different, right? Now I know, oh, when I move to this level of power for the home, I want to have these circuits be on, right? I can literally, when I use this kind of intelligence at the panel, I can eliminate all the wiring and decision making needed to create a critical load panel for the generator to manage. Now, if I can speak to each of these loads at any time, any of them can be critical at any time of the year, whether it's the air conditioning or the heating system or the pool pumps or the whatever, they can all be critical depending on what time of the day and year it is. So we're essentially allowing kind of the intelligence at the panel versus kind of the old school way, which is the electrician wires up a critical panel to tie directly to the generator. Same thing with the battery, right? We can kick on to that battery so much more quickly than you can kick on a generator, right? The time it takes to go from grid to generator power, I assure you, is going to screw up the network and all the other things associated in line with that. So if I'm going straight to that battery, then I'm using the generator to actually elongate that battery life, is giving a much cleaner experience to the homeowner. Thinking about some of these things is just delivering that, oh, how do I use these tools to make that experience better? I'll just call out one stat on this slide as we move forward. The reality of power outages most of the time is they're relatively quick. Now, we hear about the big ones in the news, and here we sit in Texas, and so there's been all kinds of newsworthy events. But really, most power outages are resolved within less than 4 hours, right? And so, how do we think about that? How do we plan for that as a builder? The other thing these tools can deliver into the communities, right, that you're building or the homes that you're constructing is this idea of virtual power plant technology. And now that may sound kind of scary and complex and weird, but it's a really pretty simple concept, which is you're using that solar that is being produced on all the rooftops across America. And instead of sending it all back into the utility or back into the grid, which is fine, that's a good way to do it, is also to store some of it locally for use at the property, right? So, okay, I'm producing all this solar. If all I'm doing with the production of that is giving it back into the grid, I really haven't made my own home any more independent or any more resilient against grid outages. Okay. So now if I'm storing some of that power inside of a battery, that's accessible to me later, right? That's as simple as any battery you're using every day of your life, right? Now, think of how simple that is. If we have batteries across America that have stored energy in them, can utilities reach into those batteries and put that out into the American public, right? So are we actually creating this very, very cool decentralized method of distributing power?
So that's for a builder that's building a community, or for the developer who's working with multiple builders in a community, they can set up a VPP. They're able to aggregate enough energy production or storage to make it valuable interacting with the grid.
Well, yeah, and this is
Yeah.
John, you actually said it earlier, and I'll just key off of what you said, right? This is becoming a very active conversation with the utility. They're concerned about how they're going to service the grid every day, every hour, whether it's summer or winter or whatever time of year it is. How am I going to service this community and all the EVs that are entering these neighborhoods and all this different stuff that's causing fragility in my utility? So it's really the utility that's going to begin to deliver incentive.
Versus the government
Right.
incentives, it's becomes
Yep.
utility incentives and utility collaboration.
At that, and that's a really exciting place for us to be. You touched on the word AI, John, and I'm not going to take the deep dark dive here into AI, but there's lots of cool things as you look at the power of intelligence across the home, right? Whether that's what you're doing at the level to manufacture and create a smarter experience, right? Which you're all doing, whether it's how your trade teams deliver that smart experience. I think there's a lot of different ways you can kind of slice the AI pie, if you will, but there's lots of ways to go into AI and AI discussion.
2026 topic,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.